I have here a lobster. This is a common lobster, Atlantic or North Sea lobster, and I've purchased it frozen, I've defrosted it, and it's already cooked. This is usually the way you'd purchase them, because a live lobster would be very expensive. Now, to prepare a lobster for cooking, which is already cooked, firstly we remove the claws and we remove the legs. Now these are fairly easy to do. You can simply twist and pull them off. However, there's one thing: if there is going to be damage here and you're worried that this will break, then you simply cut them off with the knife, like so. And there it is. So I continue around the lobster, remove the legs, and that leaves me with the claws. The claws I remove in the very same fashion, simply twist and remove. With the other one, twist and remove. And here's my lobster. I've removed the claws and I've removed the legs. And it's now time to remove the meat from the claws. Now, to remove the meat from the claws, the first stage is important, and that's to take the lower section of the claw, pull it back, and carefully remove this little piece of bone here. I now repeat the operation with the other claw. This is the heavier claw, the crushing claw. Pull it back and remove the blade. Now, to remove the meat from inside the claw, what we do is we crack the claw with a knife, with a top movement too. We can very easily remove the claw intact. Now, we've almost got the meat from the claw, and what I'm doing now is just making sure I break the shell there so that I can remove the entire claw section completely intact. Now, in the lower end of the claw there's also meat in here, and again it's the same procedure. Cracking motion, and the same here. Once we've done that, we can take a look. Still not quite ready. Give another bang, and now you can see we can completely remove the cooked meat. Now, the lower end here, I've almost got the meat out, and to facilitate removing the meat, I can slip in a small knife and free the meat from the back of the shell. I now repeat the procedure with the other claw, each side, standing up, and then remove the shell. And there we have the entire claw section from the top of the claw. Then the bottom pincer section, and particularly the bigger one, there does tend to be some flesh there, and since they're expensive shellfish, it's important to get every single bit of flesh from the shell. On the smaller pincer, not so much, but still there's our breaking technique. And there's the flesh. Having removed the flesh from the shells, the cooked flesh, we now turn to the body of the lobster, and we cut this as follows. We turn the lobster round and stretch out the tail. We now take our knife, and one thing to notice is a natural line which actually runs down this lobster. And what I do is, at the start of the tail, I cut through the body section straight through. I then proceed to cut all the way down and through the tail. Having done that, I turn the lobster round, go to where I started the cut at the body, and you'll see the natural line, and cut through and split the head in half. There we have our two halves of lobster. Now, one thing that was important when I split the lobster body was I come through the head and make sure that I don't damage the top of the head. And this is particularly important if it's going to be used for service. Now, the two halves of the lobster are called the carapace. Now, the next stage is to remove the flesh from the tail. To do this, we just go to the top of the flesh and then simply remove it, pulling gently from the shell. Repeat the operation on the other side, the other half, pushing in, catching the top of the flesh and simply pulling it back. Once I've removed the flesh from the tail, I'm going to clean up these ends. I'm going to wash these ends here. This is the ends where the intestines meet the flesh. An important point when cleaning the tail section is to remove the vein or dirt track that runs up the length of the tail. It's removed there, and to clean off the intestines at this end. Once I've removed the flesh, I thoroughly scrape out the intestines. And once I've done that, I'm going to thoroughly wash the carapace. Repeating the operation on the other side. And then I'm going to, as I said before, thoroughly wash it. And here we have it, the finished product. We have our two half pieces of carapace, which I've completely cleaned. Have to be a little bit careful when you handle these. We don't really want to break them. I have the two tail sections of meat. We've cleaned the top. And of course, here are the claws, completely free of bone. Now here I've placed the lobster meat back into the shell, and sometimes for cold preparation and presentation, this is the way you would do it, although you'd tend to cut the meat into pieces so that the diner can remove it. And it would be dressed with a little bit of lettuce and garnish and so on. But it is important, keep it whole, and of course you get a much better presentation. Now, preparing for cooking, and in this particular instance as a sauce dish, I'm going to cut the tail and the claws into fairly good sized pieces. There we are. And of course the pieces we already have taken from the claws. And here it's finished. I have my two pieces of carapace and I have the lobster flesh cut ready for cooking.